So those sort of honeypot sites were just completely spoiled. I feel, and being on sort of front line, I feel it's our duty to be talking to clients about how they can travel more sustainably, to perhaps consider taking a train over a plane. It's not rocket science, it's total common sense. You know, the younger generation are far more savvy.
This is the Green on the Go podcast, where we talk about keeping travel sustainable. And on today's episode, I'm joined by the founder of Travel Matters and the Make Travel Matter campaign, Karen Simmonds. Hi, Karen. Welcome to the Green on the Go podcast.
Hi, India. Thanks so much for having me.
It's great to have you here. So can we sort of kickstart this by just finding out a little bit more about you and your background and your involvement within the sustainable travel industry?
Right. Okay. That goes back some. Basically, I started Travel Matters 23 years ago, but I've always been interested in sustainable travel. Before I had the travel agency, the travel business that I've got now, I had a very small niche tour operation called Natural Heights, which was based out in the Western Algarve. And at the time, we belonged to something called CERT, which stood for Campaign for Environmental Responsible Travel. Now, that doesn't even exist anymore, but, you know, that was when I was like 23, 24 years old, and I've doubled my age already. So you can see I've probably had quite a while in that space. But the agency I set up 23 years ago, it's a small independent travel agency or concierge. It's based in Southwest London. And primarily we put together bespoke trips for families. The area is actually sort of termed as Nappy Valley. It has the highest density of young families in the whole of the UK, apparently. So primarily, our business is adventures and multi-centre trips and holidays for young families.
Yeah, and the name is Travel Matters. So Travel Matters, what did you want to achieve from starting it then? Where did that idea first come from?
Okay, so going back to the fact that I was always interested in the environment and social issues, I recognise that travel and tourism should be used as a force for good. And when we travel, it should really matter. We should be making that positive contribution to the destinations that we're visiting, remembering that we're always guests in host countries, and that it can make a real difference when we travel. The tourism dollar can bring economic prosperity to those destinations. So yeah, Travel Matters. I just thought, that's a really good name.
yeah. And I guess it's interesting that you're saying that it's sort of you're focusing on families, because I think there can often be a tendency when you go abroad to go, I don't want to think about the sustainable side. I just want to go away and relax and not think about anything. Talking to you, I'm 8 months pregnant right now. So I've got this at the forefront of my mind. How am I going to be traveling with a family and wanting to keep that sustainable travel thing going? But also realizing, life gets a bit harder when you're traveling with a family. So how do you kind of create these packages that are family friendly at the same time as sort of trying to be as kind of the environment as possible?
Yeah. It's not rocket science, it's total common sense. The younger generation are far more savvy than we are these days as to how you can go about that. There's plenty of innovation when we look at electrification of vehicles or scooters, things like that. But, obviously, the topic at the moment with COP26, everyone's talking about sustainability, but we've always just tried to give tips and nudges, not be at all preachy. We're not tree huggers. We're not, I can't remember where I heard it. Someone was referring to swampy. Oh, it could have been Boris Johnson the other day in a speech. We're not soap dodgers or, by being responsible or sustainable. It's not like that. So I shouldn't worry about traveling as a family, and whether you're being, creating even more problems with your carbon footprint just because you're going to be giving birth to someone else onto this planet. Our kids, actually, it was quite interesting, because I used to actually go around to different primary schools and do presentations about making travel matter. And we had this slideshow, and so many of the children had travelled to so many different places. We used to link up with the geography teachers and do this presentation, and they're used to all the tips and nudges that we would talk about, whether it's energy saving and reduction of energy usage by turning off the lights, or in your hotel room making sure the air conditioning is not left on, not taking plastic water bottles, but taking your own water container with you when you're traveling. What else? Food waste, not piling on loads and loads of food from the self-service buffet or wherever, but just when they're out and about, making sure that they're not having photographs with animals that are perhaps endangered or have been exploited, because that's going to encourage sort of bad behavior. So the talks that we used to do, and a lot of the script, I suppose, that you'll find on our website is just about how you can travel better, how you can make your travel matter. We actually have a downloadable PDF that anyone can find, because it's on the website. But again, when we help people book their travel arrangements, they can get a copy of that too, So has that answered the question? I sort of answered it in a roundabout way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think kids are often nowadays the ones to flag up the issues. They're so in tune with it, aren't they? Even
exactly.
more so than the older generation. And actually, the more that they see of this planet, I believe the more that they're going to want to look after it as well. So it's super, super important. So obviously we can't, it's still very much a part of our lives. COVID, lockdown, and how it changed the travel industry so dramatically. So we're going to sort of touch on that a little bit, but I'd love to know, how did lockdown change the way that you operated? And did you make any changes to the business during that time?
Not really making any changes to the business. We had plenty of things to do. Obviously, like everybody that is in the travel industry, everybody needed to be serviced still, by making amendments to their travel plans, either cancelling them, chasing suppliers, hotels, aviation sector, having to make those amendments for people. Obviously, we couldn't get into the premises because we have an office here. So obviously, weren't allowed on premises until it opened up again. So we just had to work remotely. We're a really small team, India, so we it's very easy for us to pivot and work from home, divert the telephones, put a notice on the door saying we're still working, or so we just worked from home before we were allowed to come back into the office. It was
kept things ticking over as much
quite
as
straightforward.
And
yes,
and yeah, absolutely. And in terms of sort of sustainable tourism, what were your main concerns pre-lockdown? And now that we're coming back, into this world of normality, I'm sort of quotation marks there, and travel is coming back. Can you see things changing? So the first question, I guess, is pre-lockdown, what were your main concerns involving sustainable tourism?
I haven't got all the stats at hand, but we could see before COVID that the trajectory of tourism growth was always on the incline, and that's good in some respects, because I think it's 1 in 10 jobs are linked to the travel and tourism sector. But the way we were traveling was getting a little bit mental in some respects. There was over tourism in some destinations, or quite a few different destinations, which had been obviously influenced by like geotagging on Instagram, that sort of selfie culture, and people then all rushing to go to places, and then making the whole experience really quite unpleasant for not just the hosts, but the people that are also paying to be there. Was always going to be a disappointment. So those sort of honeypot sites were just completely spoiled, which is really saddening, right? And then obviously the locals were getting pushed out and getting particularly upset and protesting. I think I remember seeing, I don't know if you saw it yourself, there was some footage in Venice where, and I'm not, well, I am dissing the large cruise ships. I don't like large cruise ships at all. But when you see those cruise ships just, come into moorings into these beautiful sites like Venice Harbour, one of the things I saw was this cruise ship just like slammed into the harbour, walls, whatever, and it was really shocking. It looked like something out of a horror movie, and thankfully, they've been banned now. So, I think that local, regional tourist ministers or country tourism ministers have really had to, scratch their heads and go, actually, is it worth the amount of visitors that we have coming over the actual satisfaction and well-being of the people that live in these destinations? And that's been the catalyst since COVID. Everyone's had a look at that leveler, that reset. So I'm quite encouraged that we're hopefully not going to be going back to those sort of levels anymore. There's been a new way of thinking.
Yeah, it's I think that's what it has. It's given time for people to take stock, and really look at what's going on. I experienced it when I talk about these cruise ships in Santorini. Okay. Beautiful part of the world, so stunning. And we were there, and it was April, so it wasn't high season, so it was fairly quiet, but just there was tourists around, but you had your space. Suddenly, it's like a Saturday, this cruise ship came in, and I think the people that were coming off the cruise ship were given like 2 hours or something in Ia, which is obviously that, the white buildings with the blue tops, like the very iconic kind of Santorini village. And suddenly the whole place changed. I don't think anyone was actually taking stock of what was going, like where they were. They were just getting their selfie sticks out. And it was horrible. It was horrible to kind of see. And I'm so glad that you're saying that you believe that people, that this time off traveling has given us all time to relook at the way we're doing it, and because sustainability obviously is about the planet and the well-being of the planet, but it's about the well-being of communities as well, and looking after them it's super important. So have you noticed then that our travel habits have changed post-lockdown? Have you noticed that people are booking trips in a different way, thinking about how they're booking trips, particularly obviously at the moment, COP26, everyone's talking about sustainability. So what kind of trends have you noticed post-lockdown?
Well, given that we're only just started to really take the inquiries again, consumer confidence is building. I think it's probably a bit too early to say. I know there was a survey done, PricewaterhouseCoopers did a survey. I think they surveyed over 2,000 people, and 52% of them said that they were expecting the tour operators and the travel companies to be looking at sustainability now. So I think it's a kind of two-pronged approach. You're going to get the consumer expecting it's the travel and tourism companies that need to step up, but also it's the consumer behavior that has changed. COVID has definitely made people feel far more considerate towards each other and towards the planet. But obviously, COVID was just one headache we've all had. Climate change is far bigger. So, yeah, I don't want to kind of get into the business of flight shaming or train bragging, but as a travel professional, I feel, and being on sort of front line, I feel it's our duty to be talking to clients about how they can travel more sustainably, to perhaps consider taking a train over a plane, staying longer in a destination. If they are going to fly, do they want to consider flying in economy? I mean, some people can't even consider flying in a different class, but some can. But you can talk to them about, perhaps using newer aircraft by looking at the different choice of fleet, for example, if there is, various different carriers that are going to one particular destination. But at the moment, I think it's too early days, because, even airlines are starting to build their capacity again. So, it's not like they've got the privilege of being able to choose who they want to travel with or whatever. But it's also about giving them the choice of or explaining how straightforward it would be to jump on public transport as opposed to hiring a car, or but having that immersive experience when they're there, and getting to know the locals and going to the local restaurants, and not
just sitting in your hotel. And so you could be anywhere in the world. You want to really indulge in where you are.
It's all right to sit in your hotel, even if it is an all-inclusive type break. That's okay, because that hotel could be employing plenty of locals, which the supply chain is that the locals, it's the local farmers that are benefiting from that big hotel that is offering an all-inclusive package. It's not so clear cut always, but it's having those conversations as well, isn't it? When people are just making holiday choices. Yeah.
And is this the kind of stuff, because I know that you founded, is it Make Travel Matter campaign?
Yeah.
Is this what conversations that come out from this campaign? Could you tell us a little bit more about it and why you started it?
Yeah, so thanks. So basically, Make Travel Matter was set up about 13 years ago. I went to India. That's your name.
Yeah, and I've been there twice. It's one of my favorite destinations in the world.
Yeah. So I went to India, and I was on the River Ganges, celebrating the 10 years of having Travel Matters. And I think when you hit milestones, it's kind of good to reflect and then have aspirations as to where you're going in life. And so I was kind of feeling thankful for the 10 years of the business. And I'm thinking, okay, what does the next 10 years look like? And I had a bit of an epiphany moment. Travel Matters. What have I got to do? I'm going to make travel matter. And it wouldn't go away. So that's what I did. I came back from India and did all I could to understand how making travel matter could look. So we put quite a lot of content onto the website and try to make it part of our DNA, part of our value system as a business, how we can make travel matter. So that's ensuring that our corporate social responsibility policy is in place, as well as trying to engage our customers into thinking how they can make their travel matter.
Yeah, and I think it's so important. I think we're all a little bit more in tune to that now. And if we're going to choose a travel company to book with, for me personally, if they've got this kind of thing at the forefront of their being, then they care and I care, and I feel like my money's going into the right place. But actually, really, the fact that you said you started this 13 years ago, was quite ahead of its time. I mean, sadly, it was ahead of its time because we should have been thinking about all of this way, way earlier. But yeah, I guess, did you find when you started it, there were people didn't quite understand what you were coming from, like your customers, or was it not something that they were kind of considering when they're booking a trip to make these sustainable choices? Is it more so now?
Yeah, I think definitely when I first started it, I felt a bit of a loner. Yeah, it's like, what do you want to get into talking about all that for, you know? So yes, it was a bit ahead of its time, but you know, great that I've been able to spend the last 13 odd years influencing not just consumers, but other travel businesses. And certainly during the pandemic, when we weren't able to take any bookings, or, you know, no one was traveling, it's like, well, what have I got to do? What all I can do is just learn more, educate myself more about sustainable travel, and look at the sustainable development goals, try and understand those and see how we can interweave those into the business as well, and encourage other travel businesses to do the same. So there's been some wonderful things that have been going on over the last 20 months that have really had this shift, and I'm glad to feel that Travel Matters has been part of that movement.
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing. And you know, someone who is obviously very well traveled, you work in the industry, you're very passionate about the industry, are there any destinations that you can recommend, you know, to your customers to go to that are doing it right, that are ahead of the game, or that you feel, you know, are looking after their destination better than maybe somewhere else would be?
Mm-hmm. I think generally most countries are trying to do everything right. You know, that it's going to depend on the tourism ministers of the countries, if they even exist. It's not like every country has a tourism minister, and you're going to get some countries, perhaps more richer countries, that have got larger budgets to create a nice slick marketing campaign with, you know, fancy video and photographs, and I think it's all about just being really mindful in wherever you're traveling to. You know, there's not really oh yes, this is the best country that one, no. You know, I mean, there are certain countries that have created targets like or measurements like Bhutan or Slovenia, Finland, Norway, you know, but hey, you know, it's some of the poorest of the poor countries that aren't even really the culprits of you know, carbon emissions and stuff. So, you know, I'm thinking Africa and Asia, you know, they too are champions, right? So
it often does depend on how much money is being pumped into the destination in the first place, and how much that they can kind of provide. So sort of, I guess this is me from a personal note, but I'm sure that there'll be many people listening that would be able to kind of use this question as well. So this time next year, I'll have a 1-year-old, and I want to get back into traveling. I've missed it so much. Where would you recommend that I go? If I said to you, I think I want somewhere warm, I want to be able to give back, and I want to the community, I want to be able to indulge in the community, and I want to fly, I don't know, maybe 2-3 hours max. Where would you recommend that I go?
And you're flying from the UK? From the
UK.
Yeah, and you're talking about November time, and you want to go 2 or 3 hours max for some warmth.
That's true. I haven't thought about this. All right, let's say September. Let's say September time.
Well, oh gosh.
Not in the school holidays, basically.
Yeah. Don't go in the school holidays until you have to. Yeah. Well, again, it's not that straightforward. The best thing to do is to firstly, you could have a look if you're flying with a greener aircraft. So look to see whether it's a newer or more fuel efficient model. I mean, some of the aircrafts are doing carbon offsetting, but just consider that, I suppose. But although I'm not an advocate of carbon offsetting at all, we have a tree planted for every holiday that we sell with our charity partner Trees for Cities. Check the accommodation that you're staying in, see what CSR policies they have in place. I think it's ABTA or the Travel Foundation, that they have an affiliation with Travel Life, which is like a sort of certification. There's certain hotels that have to jump through various hoops to ensure that they get their certification, the Travel Life accommodation. But there's plenty of small boutique hotels, homestays you could look at. But really, it's trying to understand and have a look at their sort of manifesto or their policies, how they're treating their staff, where they're sourcing their food. Have they got, what energy supply are they looking at or working with and using? And then when you've sussed out your accommodation, when you're in the area, you might want to consider taking public transport, as long as it's buggy friendly, or maybe, thinking of you with your 1-year-old. Public transport or cycle, but again,
whatever is doable at that time. I mean, I love cycling around cities normally. Like, that's one of my favorite ways to see if I'm in for a city break, is to see the city. It's one of the best ways to see the city, I think. Is
totally
renting a bike and just seeing it that way. It's brilliant. You can sort of stop whenever you like to, and it's carbon neutral, and it's brilliant. Well, thanks so much, Karen. It's been really, really interesting speaking to you. And if anybody wanted to kind of find out a little bit more about your business and your campaign and what you do, where can they do that? Okay, so they could go to the website www.travelmatters.co.uk, and they could go to the Make Travel Matter campaign, maketravelmatter.com. But both the websites will take you to all those tips I was talking to you about. The website's really, really useful. I've been kind of flicking through it over the last few days, and there's so much information on there. And it's a real kind of hub for content. So but there's as I said, there's a downloadable guide. There's also our vision for 2020 to 2030, which I think is of interest if people want to look at that. So what is your vision then? As I said, over these last 20 months, we were trying to understand how we can interweave the Sustainable Development Goals, and we've picked out about 6 different ones that we're hoping to work in towards, whether it's gender inequality and renewable clean energy, partnerships, peace, justice, and strong institutions. Have a look at the Sustainable Development Goals, but for anyone that's sort of wanting to investigate how they can bring sustainability into their travel business models, that's a good place to start. That's brilliant. Well, thanks so much, Karen. I won't keep you any longer because I know that you're very busy at the moment. Obviously, now that travel is making a comeback and everyone wants to get away again, I expect that you're only going to get busier. So really great chatting to you today, and speak to you soon. Thanks so much, India, and best of luck with the next month. Thank you.
Somebody very wise once said, if you want to become a millionaire as a photographer, make sure you start off as a billionaire. It's unbelievably expensive just to keep going. Everything,